Welcome to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don.
Coming at you live from San Francisco, California.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting edition of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Vaughn Smith, and this is our Cisco Cloud Fundamentals exam series. And in this episode, we're going to start taking a look at integrated infrastructure. Well, we've actually been doing a lot of that, but then this is a very specific topic that Ronnie is going to tell us all about. Mr. Ronnie Wong, how are you?
I am doing well, Vaughn. Thank you again for joining me as we continue through our Cisco Cloud Fundamentals series. We've actually covered quite a bit of material. And Vaughn, we've actually come to this point where this is our last official objective that we'll be covering that we'll actually be talking about here, which is the idea of integrated infrastructure. Now, in our previous episode, we really did go into like the Cisco realm and talk about their specific devices. Now we're not moving completely out of the realm of Cisco, but we're now talking about, again, third-party devices as well that we're now going to talk about the idea of integration and infrastructure together.
Okay, so how they kind of integrate into the Cisco infrastructure. Because I feel a lot of this stuff is already, we're like talking about how things talk to each other and they all are integrated together, but this is outside of the Cisco realm.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? So the integration happens in two ways, Vaughn, okay? One is exactly like you're talking about, the fact that we have a third party that comes in with Cisco and that they're combining their technologies together, which is good, okay? But the other part of it is what the term integrated infrastructure can also mean, and we're going to be talking about it in that particular point as well. And Vaughn, that has to do with the idea here that this is a complete solution by itself. And that means all the components are there. So Vaughn, if we go all the way back to the beginning of the series and we talked about the idea here of cloud and of data centers and everything, we know that we have different types of components that we essentially pull together, especially in virtualization, right? We talked about the idea here of having computing power, right? VMs, something like that, okay? We also said that we need some type of abstraction like networking, okay, is another thing. And then even the idea of storage of some sort. So hard drives actually now going to the idea of storage. Okay, well, all those solutions that are actually presented before us, we can actually try and build, and essentially we can kind of pull in the devices that want to. Now, Vaughn, like everything else, there's two different ways that you and I can go about this, okay? We can actually just say, here's a bunch of pieces, Vaughn, and you make it work, okay? Now, Vaughn, that may actually work out for us, okay? But in that sense, think about all the things that would actually have to involve, okay? One, you'd have to know about every single piece of technology that you're actually working with and doing, okay? Two, some of them may not be directly compatible with each other, and we've found that out before, especially with hardware. It's like, oh yeah, it works with everything, but Ronnie, not the one that you have, okay? And that can actually be a problem that you can kind of work out together as well, okay? Or you may see something like what we saw in some of our virtualization episodes, where with the Cisco-rich features that we have available, such as the virtual security gateway. I was trying to remember the actual proper terminology here, where we might find out that using the different aspects of some of the Cisco solutions like UCS and some of the different things that we have there, it may work well with VMware, okay, their particular ESXi server, okay, or if you actually go to the realm of Microsoft Hyper-V, it doesn't have all those features available to us either, okay. So Vaughn, when it comes down to the idea of integrated infrastructure, especially what we're talking about here, is also this concept of what we get as a fully developed and validated solution to the issues that we're facing, especially when it has to deal with the idea of cloud, okay? So Vaughn, the big difference between that is something that I actually saw that I thought was actually quite brilliant, okay? Is, Vaughn, have you ever been to IKEA?
I love IKEA.
You love IKEA?
Yes.
Have you ever put together one of their things?
That's the part I don't love about
Yeah.
IKEA.
Yeah. So
it's difficult.
Yeah. Now, Vaughn, have you gone to a furniture store before and just said, "Oh, that's nice"?
Yes.
Okay. And have you actually just bought something? And go, that's what I wanted, and you just kind of brought it home and you set it down and you go, "That really looks nice."
Yes, and I don't have all those extra pieces laying around going, I'm not sure if this is going to stay upright or not.
Yeah. So that's the difference here, right? An integrated solution essentially is everything that's put together, and all you have to do is use it. So if I said, let's say it's a coffee table or an end table of some sort, well, you're not having to actually go, this particular piece actually has to match this side and try and figure it out and how it works together. It's just working. It's already together, okay? Integrated solutions for Cisco follow what they call a CVD, a Cisco validated design. And that means, hey, we've already worked out how all this stuff works together. We've gone through all the pains and everything else that they have and tried to work out these solutions so that Vaughn, instead of you having to go, I know you love IKEA, but instead of you having to go to IKEA and try and figure it out, they're saying, oh no, you can just buy this solution over here and it works, okay? So Vaughn, think about something like that, okay? What are some of the things that the integrated solution offers us that the other one doesn't? Well, putting together all this stuff, we talked about some of the heartaches behind that, right? Pieces fit, they might not fit. Vaughn, have you ever taken one of those pieces and go, oh no, I put that in backward?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really kind of pain, isn't it?
Yeah.
You put it in backward and then you have to take apart like 3 or 4 pieces and then turn it around and then go, all right, it fits together.
And sometimes you don't know that you put it in backwards until like 6 steps later. It's like, oh, backtrack, turned around, and then sometimes it still doesn't work, right?
Yeah, well, the idea of us pulling these devices together, right? Computing, storage, and even the networking components together, and we're not exactly sure how they all fit together, it can be exactly like that, Vaughn. Some pieces work and fit the way that they need to. Other pieces are not playing well. They're not actually doing what we need to. And all of a sudden, we are backtracking like what you were talking about, 5 or 6 steps to try and see if we can get it to work. If not, we have to wait until either we have somebody that says, oh, yeah, I can make it work, and we have to call somebody in to do it. Or we might find out, oh, yeah, Vaughn, we're just going to have to purchase something else that's different that will actually work.
Yeah, there's always those pluses and minuses to why you want to use some of these things. And sometimes people like the flexibility and the customization that
right.
you can do
Sure.
with the pieces rather than like a one whole unit. It depends on your needs, really, and which way you want to go.
Yeah, so when it comes down to needs, right, that's actually a great focus for us to at least talk about for a brief moment before we jump into some of these, okay? So what are some of the needs that we actually need to make sure that we understand? One, of course, is time constraints, right? If I need something to be up and running, let's say within a fairly short time frame, Vaughn, for me to think that I might be able to pull together a bunch of solutions and not exactly know how everything fits together, and I have a deadline for it, Vaughn, that may not be the best solution for me.
You want they call it a turnkey,
Yeah,
right?
turnkey.
You turn the key and it's gonna come in or go.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a house.
Yeah, yeah. Integrated infrastructure. And actually, if you think about the idea of buying a car, you can buy kit cars, okay? So if you wanted to, you can actually buy the individual pieces for these cars, and then put it all together and make it run. Or Vaughn, you can just go to the car line and go, I want that one. And they just hand you a key. Well, think about the difference here. Kit car sounds fun and putting together, okay? Vaughn says no, but I say, yeah, it sounds pretty fun. But if I need it right now and I need it to run, Vaughn, the way for me to go is what? The integrated solution, okay? Because they take all those systems together in that car and they actually integrate it together. So I've given you 2 types of examples here, but the idea of the need is actually pretty key here, okay? What is the other need that you might also have to consider? Well, of course, the big one is what? Cost, okay? So you have a couple of different ways that this can actually do, right? So everything that we've talked about, we've also at the beginning or towards the beginning of the series, we're talking about capital expenditures versus operational expenditures as well, okay? So Vaughn, even though up front, the capital expenditure for the integrated solution or, integrated infrastructure might be a little bit more, I actually turn that into operational expense a lot faster than I buy all those components and then have to what? Kind of piece it together before it actually starts working, before it becomes operational expense instead. So I might find out that it actually becomes more expensive over time to have that kind of pulled together idea and solution instead, okay? So the other factor that we also have to consider, that's actually something we'll talk about needs, okay? Vaughn, what is our technical expertise, okay? So Vaughn, if I go, all right, Vaughn, you're going to help me build a data center. And Vaughn goes, I'm going to do what? Yeah, Vaughn, pick out the computing that we need, pick out the networking devices that we need. Vaughn, pick out the SAN storage device that we need, okay, to make this all work. And Vaughn all of a sudden looks at me and goes, I don't know that. And I just say, just get it done, okay? Well, all of a sudden, that may be beyond her technical expertise to be able to do so, okay? And that becomes more uncomfortable, right? Vaughn is now, I'm saying, did you get all the pieces? Well, I got pieces. All right, so put them together. I don't know how to put them together. Well, now we have a problem, okay? So that might also be a solution, whereas the integrated one, they've already got these components essentially working together, okay? So Vaughn, we want to take a look at some separate integrated solutions that Cisco is very proud of, okay, that we want to talk about, and that way you also are familiar with them as well, okay? So Vaughn, the reason why we started off the way that we did, and we talked about the idea of need and cost and different things, is a lot of times That's how you come to this. Well, you don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm just going to do an integrated infrastructure, right? You essentially consider the scenario of what you're actually put into, okay? What is my need? What is the time frame that I actually have to worry about? Do I have the expertise to do something like this? And how much am I actually willing to spend? You name it, like I said, all that's actually part of something you have to think about in terms of different scenarios that you might come across. So that's actually key for us as we consider this, especially when we go into the exam, because it's never just something like, oh yeah, you're going to pick this for this, okay? You always have to consider that idea that you might be given a scenario where you have to choose some of these things. You have to know what you're actually taking a look at, okay? So let's start off by talking about the one that Cisco is really, really proud of here, okay, is what we call the Cisco Flex Pod, okay? Now, I've gone ahead and I've pulled up the actual web pages for you. I just used my favorite search engine, Vaughn. Type in Cisco Flex Pod, okay? You're saying, where the heck did Flex Pod come from? The actual exam objectives themselves, okay, is where they came from. And so I typed that in, and that brings us to this, okay? And here they call it a platform for innovation. Now, Vaughn, this one right here is actually a combination of two companies. Cisco, of course, helps us in terms of the networking and the computing side of things, okay? So they designed the servers, and we've talked about those servers, right? The idea of the B series and C series servers. We've talked about those particular types of devices that are out there, okay? We also talked about the idea of networking, okay? Cisco provides what? Networking like crazy. Heck, Cisco is a networking company, okay? So we can see why they actually would do something like that. But even though they have access to storage devices, well, there was a particular storage company called NetApp that also combined together to help provide that particular type of storage, okay? Now, FlexPod is such a part of the way that things are for an integrated platform. Sometimes you also hear the term, and Vaughn, this is something that's newer than what our exam calls out. They don't call it integrated infrastructure. They call it converged, okay? The new fad term is converged.
Is that across the industry, or is that just
Yeah,
in
that's probably
Cisco?
industry now, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
converged infrastructure is the new cool hip term for this. And yeah, no, it's fancy.
Fancy.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are super fancy now. Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, so FlexPod is out there and available for us. But remember that here's the. I'll make sure I'm actually zooming in correctly here. Okay, here's the idea. Okay, Cisco provides what? Compute. Okay, it provides the networking, and NetApp provides the storage side of things to help build that data center solution, which eventually ends up becoming part of the cloud that we have. Okay. Now, the components themselves, right, when we start to take, let me scroll down here to the components, what they call the building blocks, you should pay attention to here too, okay? Notice that for FlexPod, it includes things like the UCS system. We've already talked about the UCS system in pretty good detail, okay, during our episode and show, but it doesn't mean that you actually understand until you realize that here it is. UCS software offers software-driven architecture, delivers pervasive simplicity and operational agility. That really doesn't mean much to most of us here. But what does mean much is the second sentence, right? It combines compute and networking with storage and access into a single unified system, okay? So they're saying, hey, this is all actually united together through the UCS, okay? Well, what are we united together? Okay, well, let's take a look, okay? Cisco Nexus switches and net storage, as well as their particular compute devices for all the virtualization that they need to handle too.
And it says it looks like it has the Nexus 9000, and we went over some of
Oh,
those
yes.
different series in the last episode.
Good eye there. Yep. So make sure you understand that also the Nexus 9000 series is a part of this. And there are a bunch of these different Nexus 9000 series, which we talked about. Make sure you go back and review that episode too. And there it is. NetApp is a storage solution. Now, Vaughn, I bring this up because it's very easy to confuse just the idea that NetApp is by itself a integrated solution or a converged infrastructure. In other words, but it's not, right? So by itself, it's not an integrated infrastructure, okay? By itself, it's not a converged solution, but NetApp and, of course, Cisco Nexus switches together, along with the UCS, all that combined gives us FlexPod, is what it actually gives us, okay? And the last component here that they talk about, the UCS Director delivers foundation for private cloud infrastructure. So they're saying, hey, if you're running FlexPod, okay, well, it's probably for this idea of this private cloud type of infrastructure for us that we actually want to be able to do. Now, NetApp is so proud of this particular outcome of what they actually talk about. NetApp itself considers that this is what they call a future-proof infrastructure platform, okay? So in other words, NetApp is saying we built, we believe that this solution is future-proof. You're not going to outgrow this solution. That's a pretty bold statement.
I was just gonna say that, Ronnie. I'm like, that's pretty bold for y'all to be claiming that.
Yeah, it really is. But that's what they believe, and that's because it is a fairly solid solution. Now, the other term that you may hear, and I'm not going to tell you can see this on the exam, but the other term that you may actually hear or see at times, right, is you may hear the term complete data center stack solution as well. Okay, all those mean the same thing. Integrated infrastructure, converged infrastructure, complete data center stack solution, all that's essentially combined together as these things, okay? So those components that we talked about, make sure you understand that it really is for a private cloud solution. Now, there's two different configurations that you should know, or two different component products. There's a FlexPod data center. Well, you can understand that the idea of the data center itself, when you talk about FlexPod, is what makes a difference here, since we're virtualizing everything that's behind in FlexPod, is that we can pick out our own hypervisor that we want to actually be able to run, and then we can pick out a particular Cisco validated design if we want to meet the needs that we need, okay? And what I mean by that is that there's actually a special edition of FlexPod Data Center that runs with VMware vSphere version 6, okay, that you can actually end up doing. And when you actually start doing something like that, now all the storage actually goes into flash storage, which is much faster than the conventional hard drive types of storages that we have. There's also a fairly scaled down version of FlexPod as well, called FlexPod Express. Now, Vaughn, in this version, is kind of like the data center version, but light. Okay, and the reason why we might choose something like this is cost, but also let's say that our center is much smaller than what its complete data center would need. But at the same time, or an enterprise solution would need, excuse me, in terms of a data center. Okay, but the reason behind actually implementing this, though, is for cost and management solution that we can quickly grow into the data center solution if we need to. And the advantage of this is that it doesn't require a huge, gigantic scale in terms of us learning about new equipment. So, Vaughn, if we started off with a small to medium center that was already using FlexPod Express, it means if we start to actually grow into that data center, the FlexPod data center itself, we're not taking a huge learning curve. Okay, we actually can scale into it fairly easily, and that's kind of the key here. Okay, so that's the idea of FlexPod. All right. So from that point, actually, there's one more that I wanted to make sure, and I realized here, I forgot, which is FlexPod Select. FlexPod Select is actually a very specialized component in terms of FlexPod itself. So this is not for your regular data center traffic. This is for something super highly specialized if you're actually doing something like this. So if you're running something like a Hadoop database or an Oracle gigantic type of database that you're doing, and you still need that completely converged solution, they have this that's really designed for something like that as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one, but that is a possibility of something you might have to go, which of these versions am I running? You might think that the Select means it's cheaper. It doesn't necessarily mean cheaper. It means it's more highly specialized. Express and Data Center is the one that you want to keep an eye on when you come to this. All right, Vaughn, let's talk about our next solution here, okay? The other one that's also out there is one that's called vBlock, according to the official exam objectives. But vBlock itself is no longer actually the recommended solution that's out there. The new one is VXBlock, okay? So the original vBlock itself is actually a combination here of a device and kind of company that they came up with, and it used to stand for VCE. Stands for three different companies: VMware, okay, for the V, Cisco, okay, and then the idea of E for EMC, which essentially is a storage company as well. Okay, today we might hear the term Dell EMC is what we hear. Okay, so they actually design SANs too. Now, when you start talking about this particular one, once again, remember those three components: computing, okay, or the compute component, networking, and storage. EMC provides what? Well, they provide the storage. Okay. Cisco, again, provides the idea of compute and networking. And VMware says, look, we'll go ahead and we'll actually bring up everything, but use a virtualized solution instead. So the original vBlock, the big difference, and the only difference here between these two, okay, between VXBlock and vBlock itself, is the networking component. So Vaughn, in the original vBlock system that they had, it relied on the Cisco Nexus 1000V. We spent quite a bit of time into 1000V earlier in our series here, okay? So we showed you some of the different things that it could do and everything. But later on, as they started moving more and more into the cloud, VMware said, look, we have what we call our own VMware's virtualized or VMware's distributed switch is what they have. Make sure I'm telling you, vSphere distributed switch, okay? And that's the big difference, okay? Now, in the vSphere distributed switch, right, the VDS that we have, this is kind of key for us as we start thinking about this, right? Is that VDS, it can do what we call private VLANs as well, okay? So can Nexus do it? Yes, but usually when you go into the virtualized world, the Nexus 1000, the VDS itself actually provides for private VLANs, essentially a VLAN within a VLAN, so we can isolate things a little bit easier and better too, okay? Now, with VMware, you tend to, of course, use their particular vSphere solution. And then with the compute, for us in Cisco, we use our UCS servers, okay? Traditionally, the B series servers is what they actually, push into. And then, of course, EMC provides the solution as well, okay? The storage solution that we need. So we're not really getting too fancy into this, but that is just enough for you to take a look at. And there are related links over here on the right-hand side. So if you type in vBlock system, you'll see that it probably automatically almost leads you to VXBlock, because vBlock is kind of a system that's almost in the past at this point instead, okay? So we have Cisco solutions for vSpecs. I know they're not really changing too much, are they? Okay. So here we have the idea of what we call vSpecs here. And this one is a combination here, and actually specifically brought up by EMC itself. Okay. So Cisco Unified Data Center Solutions for EMC vSpecs provides a simple, fully integrated and validated infrastructure. And what they're saying is, look, they work so closely together, okay, and everything that they did. They even on their page listed their Cisco validated designs. And notice they actually show you, like, if you're using vSphere 5.5, they show you all these. Now, this is a little bit older on this page. And then they even show you, like, here's the validated solutions here for vSpecs and Microsoft infrastructure, and then even VDI if that's what you choose to run, and other architectures that are also out there and available. Now, this one, as you take a look, okay, there's really not a ton of the differences from what we just talked about in terms of vBlock, right? We still have those separated components. It just brings everything together the same way. Cisco provides compute, provides networking, EMC provides storage at this point, okay? So that's kind of the big one here. This is actually designed for, once again, the private cloud type of solution, okay? All right, so our final one, this is probably the hardest one for what we're actually talking about. And the reason why is that it's hard to find information because the exam objectives itself doesn't call it this. So go figure, Vaughn, okay? So the exam itself actually just lists something that they call open block, okay? You can do a search for it with your favorite browser that you want to, and you'll see everything doesn't lead you to the term open block, okay? What leads you to is Cisco UCS integrated infrastructure with Red Hat OpenStack platform.
Because that's exactly the same thing. It's so close.
Yeah, so close that you would actually be able to find this. Yeah, it's not. It is so weird, right? So the other term for this is an acronym that is USCSO. Go figure. Yeah, USCO. Sorry, USCO. I put too many S's in it. Okay. So this is Red Hat's integrated structure in, okay, with, well, Cisco UCS. So they decided that they wanted to actually put the OpenStack platform in. And at some point in time, Vaughn, the reason why open block actually appears in the exam objectives is that it got a nickname. So instead of actually calling it the UCSO, it got the nickname instead that they called open block. Okay, so don't know why. That's just the way it actually ended up happening. But it's about the stack, right? The same thing. Compute, networking, storage. They provide all the solutions for this. Now, for us, we already know something. In the compute, Cisco is handling that. In the networking, Cisco is handling that. Once again, the UCS servers come into play here. And also in networking, the Nexus 9000 series also comes into play here as well. But when we get into the storage solution, this is where it gets a little bit different. So this actually relies on what they call Red Hat Ceph, C-E-P-H storage, okay? And they combine that together so that everybody can access it with more of the Cisco UCS series servers or rack servers that they have available to you. So that's the only real big difference here. So all three of them, Vaughn, essentially provide for us compute, networking, and storage, but with different solutions that are actually offered out there and available to you. Now, it again is up to what your need, okay, that Vaughn talked about at the very beginning of this episode here, and what is actually going to be suitable for what you actually need to be able to do. All of these different solutions will come in at different price points, okay? They will come in with, of course, different levels of commitment that you have to be able to do, or different levels of technical skill to you, so that you can actually put it together, okay? So in that sense, it requires a bit more technology, like something like Red Hat, right? To be able to integrate that in, if you've never actually done it, well, it means you have to follow the guides fairly closely. The FlexPod, though, Vaughn, that actually just sends you kind of the whole unit, and it's almost plug and play. I'm not saying it's exactly that, but it's close enough to where most of us would probably feel fairly comfortable in being able to do something like that, okay? Now, Vaughn, as far as the integrated infrastructures that we've talked about here, right? That is the key, right? Is understanding what that term actually means, and these different components, and being able to identify them, especially as you get ready to go on to the exam, being able to isolate them according to some of the scenarios like what we've talked about as well, okay? All that's going to be very important. I wish I could tell you like what every single scenario might be, but I can't do that. Again, that's not what we're going to do here. But you can see why, if you take a look at each one of these possible solutions, Vaughn, you can probably figure out as you go through those. And I recommend that you go down those pages and take a look and read some of the case studies that are actually out there and available for them that will help you to set up and understand why I would pick this solution over another solution, okay? So those are kind of key elements and ideas that you need to make sure that you understand and that you're fairly comfortable with before you go in and take the exam. If not, you're going to find yourself probably in more, guessing than you want to be. Okay, so just take some time, make sure you take a look at that. But Vaughn, for us, as far as the integrated infrastructure goes, that's actually a good wrap up for the specific technology that has been called out on the Cisco exam objectives that should help you to get ready for the exam.
All right. Well, a lot more great information, just like all the other episodes, Ronnie. I believe this is the last in like the official series
Correct.
of us together.
It is.
All right. Well, I've had a lot of fun. I hope you guys have had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I really have. So thank you so much, Ronnie. And thank you guys for watching. We're going to go ahead and sign off for IT Pro TV. I've been your host, Vaughn Smith.
And I'm Ronnie Wong.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.